Check, baby, 1, 2.
Welcome to Unspoken Lives, the podcast that uncovers the powerful, untold stories of everyday people. The real stories you don't always hear, but ones that deserve to be told. I'm your host, Kelsey Billingsley. In each episode, we'll explore journeys of growth, resilience, and transformation. Conversations with guests who have faced challenges, embraced change, and discovered new purpose along the way. Through their stories, you'll find inspiration, hope, and a reminder that every life has a story worth telling. Let's dive into this next Unspoken Life. Today you're meeting Angela Taylor. She's a wife, a mom of 2, and a successful real estate broker in Texas. She's built her life through hard work and faith. What makes her story inspiring is the road she and her family walked before the success. There were seasons when money was tight, when the bills didn't add up, and when she and her husband had to trust that God would provide for their family of 4. They never went without, but it took real strength to keep going. Angela shares practical wisdom, honesty, and encouragement for anyone facing a tough season. I think her story will speak to you. Let's get into it. I first met Angela because she sold our last house, and that's how we built our relationship. And then I heard through a friend that she just has an amazing story on how she got to where she is today. So that's why I welcomed Angela onto this podcast. So thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Before we get into everything else, can you just share a little bit about what your life is like today, your family, what it looks like?
Yep. I have 2 children. Well, first, let me back up. Before the children was the husband. Do still have the husband. So I've been married for 23 years. It'll be 24 in March. We've been together 25 years. My husband's name is Tim, and we have 2 great kids. Katie is a sophomore in college, and John is a sophomore in high school. I am a broker, but I am an associated broker with Keller Williams.
Okay.
For people who don't know what that is, what the difference is, everybody that gets their real estate license is a real estate agent. And in order to be an agent, or to sell homes, you have to be under a broker.
Okay.
Your license has to be with a broker. I got my broker's license in 2020. I thought I was going to start my own little brokerage then, and everybody knows what happened in 2020. And then the real estate market went crazy in 21 and 22.
Right.
And so God had other plans. So for now, I'm a broker that works under a brokerage. I do think that in the future, there is another plan. So we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see if that.
And your husband, does he do that with you?
Yep. So
Okay.
Tim got his real estate license in 2017. I got my license in 2016. I was getting so busy that I was often calling Tim at work and saying, hey, can you come home early? Because someone needed to be there for the kids so I could go show houses. Then at a certain point, it was like, hey, we're having quite a bit of success here. We don't need your income. What if you come home and we do this together? He got his real estate license, and we kind of figured out pretty early on that it wasn't going to be him selling. So I've done that side the whole time. And he does, I say he's like the business manager because he does stuff behind the scenes, like a client relation management system. So if you ever get a newsletter from us, it comes through the system that he organizes. He does all of the taxes and the bills and keeps the spreadsheets on where I am year to date and all of the, profits and losses and all this stuff that I could care less about.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the background. Can you talk about what you were doing before this, how you got into real estate?
Yep. So my former career, I was a children's pastor. Oh. And most recently, I was the creative arts director at a very large church here in the area. I was not raised in a Christian home. My parents would take us to church. We were Easter lilies. So let's go to the church down the street because it's Christmas or it's Easter or Mother's Day because it makes you feel good. But there wasn't a true faith that I was raised with. In fact, my mother's father would tell her that when you die, you're dead, you're in the ground, that's all there is. I guess I was 12 in the 6th grade. My best friend asked me to go to church camp with her that summer. So I went, and it was 4th of July of 94, I think. So you can date that however you want. I was 12. It was at Green Acres Baptist Camp down in Tyler, Texas. And I gave my heart to the Lord that night. They were talking about get saved or there's, hell waiting for you. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Better do this.
So I was scared to death. I said yes to the Lord that night, but then I went home with this new fire, this excitement that was lit in me, but it wasn't supported. It wasn't nurtured. And so I read This Present Darkness by Frankie Peretti. Sixth graders, probably a little too young to read that. I was scared of every single shadow that I saw.
How did you get it?
Bobby was the name of my counselor. We corresponded a little bit here and there. I think that first year, maybe she recommended it. So I had asked her, send me a Bible. I had a Bible I was starting to read, but there was just no growing in my faith. Then when I turned 16 and I got a car, I'm able to drive. I had a couple of jobs. I've always been a hard worker. That's part of who I am. I had several jobs, and one day at school, a girl came up to me and said, hey, can anybody fill in for me? I've got a babysitting job. It's on Sunday for this church, but I can't make it. They'll pay you $20 an hour. I was like, hey, sure, why not? I'll go there. So it was in the church nursery, tiny little church in like a strip shopping center. And I started working in the nursery, learned a lot of the Bible from Veggie Tales. But anyways, long story.
And that was all in the church that you were?
Yeah. Okay. So I was working, that was my first job working in a church, the first church I worked for. And after that first Sunday, I really enjoyed it. And they were like, they thought I did good. They said, do you want to come back? Do you want to do this another Sunday? Sure. So I started doing that every Sunday. And then they asked me if I could come on Wednesdays because they had a Wednesday night fellowship. Okay. Sure. And then at one point I was like, can I go to the church service? I think I want to go here. Yeah. And yeah, of course. So I started going to church there, really started growing in my faith at that time, but still was not living for the Lord because generational curses, let's say that. So I was not.
Did your family know you were going there?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they were fine with it.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't care. They weren't opposed to Christian. They just, but what was interesting is that at that point, so I had been going there since I was like 16. So by the time I graduated, which would have been probably 18, senior year, we had a ski trip with the church, like the youth group. And it was a tiny, tiny church. At that point, we had gotten into a building, but it was still really tiny. And for whatever reason, none of my friends could go on the skiing trip. And I didn't want to go by myself. And so I asked my mom, will you go with me? She and my dad had just gotten divorced. And I said, Mom, will you go with me? And she's like, I don't want to go to some church ski trip. They're going to be, trying to get me to go to worship services. I don't want to do that. It's like, okay. And she said, ask everybody. So I asked everybody and they all said no.
Oh my gosh.
Interestingly. And she said, fine, I'll go. But don't ask me to go to any of the little worship service things. Okay, Mom. So she went and we had that week skiing in Colorado and on a bus. And I had been asking the church to pray for my mother for many years.
Right.
2 years. I asked them to pray for her. She went on the trip. By the end of it, she was kind of like paying attention, I think. And they started inviting her. She really made relationships. She connected with people. Kathy, come on Sunday. They invited her. And she started coming because she made relationships. And then she did get saved at 42 and met her then husband there. And my little sister and my mom and I were baptized on the same day.
Oh, wow.
Funny enough, walking into the baptismal tank, I slipped right into the water and the pastor, of course, laughed and said I baptized myself. I was so excited. But anyway, so that was a really neat piece of my story. Unfortunately, that's not where she's at anymore today. But this is my necklace that she gave me because she used to tell everybody that I led her to the Lord. But so anyways, I was 16. I had been going to church. At 18, I was really starting to seek the Lord more. And he was speaking to me. And when I was 18, I absolutely felt called by God to be in the ministry. And I told my pastor at the time. And
was it just a feeling, like a strong feeling, or did something
a strong feeling? And I think when I hear from God, there is almost an internal voice. Sometimes, this is the funny thing, because I teach Bible study all the time. So sometimes you hear this, and usually when I hear, I'm like, is that you? Or is that me? Is that you or me? You or me? And then he'll confirm.
Okay.
Over and over, he'll confirm through other believers, through the word. Worship songs that come on, he will confirm in certain ways. And then I'm like, yeah, that's you. And the more you get to know God's voice, the more you recognize it. Just like you turn on the radio, and if I was to put on let's say Michael Jackson, okay, if I put his voice on, you know his voice immediately. Anybody recognizes it because you've heard it so much. when you start to tune in and listen to God's voice, the more you recognize his voice, the more you start to, oh yeah, that's you. So I felt this stirring, a stirring in my heart that just said, I'm supposed to be in ministry. I'm supposed to be doing this. And I told my pastor, and I guess he had been perhaps of the fundamentalist Baptist old school. And he said, darling, you can be a pastor's wife, but you could never be a pastor. Oof. What he was saying is biblically accurate, but he didn't say it in the way that I wish he had it. Right. What he should have said is told me that and said, do you feel like God's calling you into worship ministry, missions, women's ministry, children's? And that's what he didn't tell me that I wish he had. Instead, I was like, gosh, I guess I didn't hear the Lord right.
Yeah.
That was my mistake. And so I went away thinking, I guess I won't be in ministry. And so I went off to the University of Texas, and I'm like, I do not fit in here. The only thing great about the University of Texas is that I met my husband there. My very first week at college, I met him, and we've been together since I was 18. But other than that, I read the Bible cover to cover that year. And I felt like I was being drawn out, like to churches. I would stand outside of these beautiful churches on campus, and I still had that calling. I still knew that was what I was supposed to do, but didn't know how to get there. And so I think I was in education was my original major. And then my apartment burned, like my second year of college.
What do you mean it burned?
The apartment complex burned.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but through that, the American Red Cross was there. There were social workers helping me. And I was like, I'm going to help with social work. That's how I can help people. Maybe that's my calling is social work. I started down that path, and it was like, the more I was in some of these classes at UT, I was like, this is just not right for me. I took a class called The Rise of Christianity. Shouldn't have taken that at UT because he sat there and tried to tell me Christianity was a farce, and that everything that we believe is really just pagan beliefs and all of this. And I always, in every class, front and center, and I was challenging him on these things. And he literally had a pitchfork that he brought one day and said, I know, this is what you're thinking. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, sir. You're correct. So anyways, I stepped back from the University of Texas. I started going to community college, paid cash out of pocket, and I was passing everything, like on the dean's list. And eventually, Tim and I moved back to Dallas. That was in Austin. So we moved back to Dallas. We had gotten married. So kind of fast forward to, I think, 2001. We're there, and I was working at a church. I guess my mom and stepdad were going to a church at that time, Parkway Hills Baptist Church off the tollway. My mom and stepdad were going there, and they had heard that the church was looking for a secretary. And I'm still going to community college, so I started working and doing that job. And I found myself one day sitting in the sanctuary at lunchtime by myself. The lights were off, except stained glass in the back.
Right.
And I was just sitting there, and God was like, I called you into ministry. And I'm okay. So this time I'm going to talk to my pastor about it. And Pastor Sam Dennis, one of the best pastors that I've ever had for a church that I attended, and one of the best pastors I've ever worked for.
Okay.
Still in ministry, but he does missions now. Shout out to Pastor Sam if he ever hears this. I love you. But I talked to him, and through all of that, I ended up going to Liberty University.
Okay.
Getting my degree in religion with the focus in youth ministry. And also in the middle of all this, we moved to Maine. Tim's parents, his mom and ex-stepdad had moved to Maine, and we went to visit them over Thanksgiving. It was November, freezing. I hate cold. I don't even like winter in Texas. We went there, and I told Tim I would never live here. Guys, I kid you not. Less than a year later, I was living there.
Why?
God. Because God, that's why he wanted to grow me and stretch me. And it wasn't just me, obviously my husband. But when Tim and I first got married, he's from Cape Cod. I'm from Texas. And, I had said, oh, I love you so much. I would move anywhere for you if you wanted me to. And he's like, I love you so much, I wouldn't ask you to do that. Well, a few years later, just kidding. I love my husband. Here we are moving to Maine, freezing cold. But during that season, God did so much, and he grew me and grew us. And, that's going to lead to the next part of my story. But I guess when I was finally really living for the Lord, really, truly living my life 100% for the Lord once Tim and I were married. And God definitely brought me Tim in a season of my life where my mother and I were not speaking at all. Things had kind of gone wayward. I needed Tim. He needed me. God knew that we needed each other. And we had a conversation. Both of us come from divorce. My mother has been divorced 3 times. She's on her 4th marriage. His mom has been divorced 3 times. And we both said, this isn't what we don't ever want to be divorced.
Right.
That's a thing for us. So I am very proud of how many years we've been married.
Yeah,
but
it should be.
And it's not easy. Marriage isn't easy. It is work, and it's choosing to love someone over and over, even when they irritate you because they're breathing like, are you getting old? Because you sound like,
What happened to your breathing?
I play with him jokingly. I do love the man. I totally sidetracked and rabbit trailed. But anyways, we had moved to Maine, was absolutely living for the Lord at that point, truly had a relationship with him. And we were going to a church. You know, you move to Maine in the middle of nowhere. Maine is a very dark state spiritually.
Okay.
As far as churches, there just are not a lot. But we ended up moving to Waterville, Maine. And I was looking online because I had worked at this point for 2 Southern Baptist churches. Ended up finding Living Water Community Church, which was a Southern Baptist church in Waterville, Maine. The weirdest thing. It was a God thing. Tiny. It was meeting in a champion's gym. Like, in fact, I taught kids Sunday school in a bar. It was literally a bar. On Saturday night, it was a bar, and you would go in on Sunday morning, and we were using it as a church. There was like sticky beer on the floor. But at that point, I had been volunteering in the kids, and then VBS season came, and Pastor asked me if I would head up VBS, Pastor Mike, and I said, sure. It was at that time, like I was finishing up my degree, and I was trying to figure out, do I go women's? Do I go children's? And I remember asking Pastor Sam, what do you think? Because I had called him, what do you think, Pastor Sam? Women or children? He said, I don't remember what he said, something about Darlin also. And, you know, it just so happened that the opportunity opened for children's. The pastor asked me, he needed someone. After I did VBS, he said, would you be our children's pastor? Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. So that was how I started doing children's ministry. Working in, you know, really I started at Fellowship of Plano working in the nursery and then started there as a children's pastor. And then I worked there for several years while Tim and I were there. And then Tim and I felt called to a different church while we were in Maine. And we started going to, it was called Temple Academy Calvary Temple. Temple Academy was the Christian academy that went there. But I worked there for many years. Pastor had asked me to be the children's pastor there.
Okay.
So I did that. And eventually, God called us back home, which I was so thankful because I have 3 sisters who mean the world to me. And so I had missed out on a lot of my younger sisters, you know, school years and her high school stuff and some of her college things. And my older sister had just had a baby. My grandmother was 89 or something. She was about to be 90. And every time I had to leave home and say goodbye to them, I never knew if it was the last time I would see my granny. And so I just kept praying, God, please take me home. Please let me go back home to Texas, not home to heaven yet. Please take me back home to Texas, and please let me be back for Granny's 90th birthday. And I had no desire to come back to Texas. I had actually finally gotten into the rhythm. I had best friends and church family and was loving the simple, slow life in Maine. But then I was having this like tugging on my heart, like I miss my family and feeling again like it's time to come home. And it was definitely God. Tim said, okay, we can go, but you have to find a job first. And I thought at the time that, well, I'll do teaching because I had also been substitute teaching in Maine. I'll teach. I can be, you know, I'll work at a Christian school. I have enough history credits. I'll teach history. I love Bible history. And I tried every avenue, and it was like every door kept shutting. And then my dad had ended up going to this church, and he heard that, you know, well, give me your resume, and I'll give it to the children's pastor there, or I'll give it to the men's minister, he'll give it to children's. And so he did, and I didn't think anything of it. I think there was a secretary position available, and I'm like, well, I'm more than qualified for this. I can do that. It'll be my foot in the door.
Yeah,
I'll get in. But no way a church like this huge mega church is going to hire me as children's pastor or anything like that when I've been at all these small churches. And I got a call, and they said, hey, we want you to come down and interview. I flew down, interviewed, and at the time, I didn't know what I was interviewing for because the head at that time had told me, well, we have a couple positions coming open, but I can't say what they are right now because the people haven't announced it. Well, okay. So I kind of shared my story, and then I got a call that yes, they wanted to hire me, and they wanted to. I had been praying in my house in Maine because I had a crafting business as well. So I was doing like truly making things, homemade baby clothes, like hair bows, shoes, all these kind of things. Truly creative gifting that I have, while I was also substitute teaching, while I was also children's pastor, doing all of these things. And I was praying like, God, why have you, I seriously said this, why did you make me so creative? But I can't find a job where I can do all these things. Like, and then here she calls me and she says, we want you to be the creative arts director of children's ministry. And I'm like, what? So not only did I get to do the creative side, which was so much fun, I got to be with children and teaching, which is what I love. I love kids. Teaching the word of God, doing what I knew I was called for that job. And it was wonderful until it wasn't. And I think the reality is, if I had been a single woman, I could have done that job and done it really well for the rest of my life.
Yep.
But when you have a church that's that big, there's a lot that's required of people. And I had 2 little kids, and I for the first time ever in their life, I had to drop John off at a daycare, and I would literally sit under my desk and cry because I wanted to be with my kids.
Yeah.
And that was the most important thing to me. And so Tim and I talked about it and prayed, and it's like, well, when Tim and I were young and we first moved to Maine, we were flipping houses with his parents. Like, they were doing the financial side and I was doing the design side. Tim would do some of the work.
Was that part of the plan moving there to do that?
Actually, I think part of the plan moving there was to have a barbecue food truck. There was a lot of big dreams that maybe didn't come to pass, but we started deciding we would do home flips.
Okay.
And I really liked it. I liked getting to pick out paint colors and taking something that was like, meh, at first, that's not so cute, and then choosing a few finishes, and all of a sudden it's really cute and someone wants to live there. Then when we were moving back to Texas, I actually put my house on the market, like on a for sale by owner website. I wrote my own listing description and I did all these things, and like I knew how to sell that house. And I did find a buyer to buy our house. From that, there was that little seed planted of like, hey, I know how to do this. I'm actually pretty good at this. And then, went into working, and I know I was doing what God had us doing. And then at the end of that season, I had a friend here in Texas. So fast forward, we're living in Texas. I had a friend that from high school. She was our realtor. She was a stay-at-home mom and was selling, a few houses here and there. And I was like, man, if she can do this and stay at home with her kids, the salary that she's making, I can make my salary and I can be home with my kids and I can go and be class mom and homeroom mom. And so we stepped out in faith. Things had gotten to a point at the place that I was working that I didn't want to work there anymore.
Okay.
And so we really prayed about it. I stepped out. I thought my first year, if I could sell 6 houses, hey, I'd make my salary that I had made at the church.
Right.
And then that would be good enough. And instead, I sold 6 houses in like the first couple of months. And I was well, hey, if I can do that, I can do 12. And then I sold 12. And I was like, I could do 24. And then I did 24. And by the end of the year, I think I had sold, I want to say it was 32, but I watched a video the other day that said 43 families. So I don't know if I did a couple of leases or
and
what
your goal was 6.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but that was God blessing this new venture. And I didn't realize how much ministry I would actually get to do, how many people I'd get to work with in real estate. It was my first time stepping out of full-time ministry and working in a secular environment where I was definitely around a lot of people who promote self. That's a hard thing about real estate. That's what you're selling is your self-services. So it's really hard not to self-promote. And I think sometimes being around people where I'm used to talking a certain way, and I was now in this world, in this environment of people who do not talk that way. And in fact, they talk where I'm like, whoa, kiss your mother with those lips. Like, it was very foreign to me.
Yep.
But I had to learn how to adapt and how to live and do my own thing and just, let God lead the business. And so here I am, all these years later, and God has abundantly blessed this business. He's, for all these years, I've always wondered, are you ever going to call me back to full-time ministry? Like, what are you doing here? How long do I get to do this? Because I really enjoy real estate.
Right.
I love it. I have a passion for houses. I still get to work with families and kids. I'm still praying with people over their house. I do believe it's a ministry that he's given me.
That's a tough time. I mean, I remember when you sold our house. Like there's some stressful moments that families go through.
Families go through so much stress, questioning and doubting and fear and anxiety and all those things. So getting to pray with people has been a true blessing. And then always wondering, what is God doing? And the whole time that I've done this, it doesn't matter what neighborhood I lived in, but I've gotten to lead a Bible study in my home, which I didn't get to do when I worked in a church full time. But now I'm in a position where I get to have women come to my house, and people who may not step in a church would come, and hearing the lives that are being changed and their husbands their lives are being changed. And that has been like the greatest gift. Is real estate's wonderful, but at the end of the day, I still consider it a ministry, and all of that's great. But getting to be in the places that God has put me in, being able to be here for such a time as this, to be able to be in the part of the neighborhood that I'm in and have people come in and learn about God and to share his word has been incredible. So I'm still doing full-time ministry, but I'm also getting to do something that I love. And I think, your original question, which was probably 30 minutes ago, you asked me what I was doing before real estate. I was doing children's ministry. That was a long way of saying that.
No,
but
you're good.
Well, during children's ministry. So let's talk about what life was like at that time. We were a family of 4, 2 little kids living in Maine. Churches in Maine do not have a lot of money. You come here, and churches on any given weekend, they may take in several $100,000s in tithes. Their budgets are millions of dollars.
Right.
I was used to working on shoestring budget. My budget for VBS was so small that I would call churches all over the country and get their hand-me-downs and, find ways of making things on my own, getting donations from the community.
Getting creative.
Yeah, absolutely. On a shoestring budget. That was it. And I actually taught for Lifeway a course called VBS on a shoestring budget because I was so used to it, which talk about being a whole new world when you're working for a mega church and you're putting together a budget. And I would be like, I don't need this much on my budget. Can we could take this down. Like, I don't need this. And they're like, don't take that down. You're going to need it. I'm like, I could just reuse this or no. Anyways, totally different world. But while we were living in Maine, all of that to say, the churches don't have a lot of money. The churches I worked for were really not able to pay hardly anything. They covered my cell phone bill. My daughter was able to go to the Christian Academy for free. But one year, I actually had the IRS call me, and I was going to owe money on taxes because of the way ministry was charged there, like on your taxes. So I had to step back and tell Pastor, I'll do this as a volunteer, but don't give me the $200 you were giving me or whatever. Anyways, all that to say, my husband was working for GameStop, and he was like the general manager of a GameStop there. It was the flagship for Maine.
Okay.
And he was working 24/7, and his salary was $40,000. $40,000, a family of 4.
Yeah.
And God made that work. There were many things he did to bless us, and he stretched. And, I was on Maine Care, which is like government insurance.
Right.
I was on WIC with both of my pregnancies. Talk about embarrassing, going to a line and paying for your cheese and your milk and your cereal with your WIC checks. That is humbling.
I know you said embarrassing. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, because it takes a long time for someone to use. So when you're paying cash or credit, whatever, they just check you out. When you're doing a WIC transaction, you have this check, and they have to make sure that the item is a WIC item. And then sometimes they would call over the speaker system, WIC something or other. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. And they're looking at you, and you just feel helpless, like embarrassed. So I got used to eating a lot of boxed macaroni and cheese with grape juice and putting tuna in it when I was pregnant. That was what I ate with John a lot. So living on $40,000 a year when you're living in Maine, you're heating your house with propane, like oil.
Yeah.
So you would have this huge tank, and it would cost, at that time, I think that was around 2008 when I was pregnant with John, 2009. We would run out of heating oil because we were putting in the minimum to like get us through, because it's, at that time, oil was like $5 to $8 a gallon back then just to fill your car. Well, you're paying the same to fill your house to heat it, and you're
Takes a
living
lot
in
more.
temperatures that are below zero, it was freezing all the time. I would wear like 2 pairs of socks, long johns, pants. I'd have a heating blanket on me and the heater on and still be freezing.
Did you ever have moments of, I mean, being a mother, I know you just want to take care of your kids. Did you ever go through low moments of wondering?
My kids never went without. Never. This is the crazy thing. This is God, right? God providing. In fact, it was funny because my best friend at the time, her name is Angela, her husband was a doctor. So her husband made a ton of money. And I always laughed because I'm like, my kids are dressed better than her kids. She dressed her kids in Walmart clothes, but she spent more money than I spent, and my kids were wearing gymboree. It's because I'm really good. Remember, I taught the shoestring budget, so I know how to do it. I would buy gymboree, Crazy 8, Janie and Jack when it was on clearance, and I would buy for the year ahead. So it was on clearance, and then I would have my coupons. I would get like a bag full of clothes, and it was a whole season worth of clothes, and it cost like $5.
Wow.
And then I would take those clothes and go to the resale shop after my kids wore them and sell them for more than I paid for them. So, and my girlfriend Angela loved this. She was always like my biggest cheerleader. She thought that was great. But that was how I was getting my kids into cute clothes. I was making like hair bows and all these things for Katie. I was bringing in money in any way that I could. So yes, I was a children's pastor, but also to bring in some income, I was substitute teaching for the schools. And I did the Little Miss Sassy Pants business. It was named after Katie, who is now Big Miss Sassy Pants. But I still love her. And so I would bring in money in little ways to try and help. Like at Christmas, I would make my family homemade gifts. Money was tight, but we never went without. I could find stuff at consignment stores, toys for my kids, or people would give them toys, or we never went without. We worked really hard to get out of debt. We didn't want to have any debt. We worked so hard to pay it off, but I still had my student loans. Working in ministry, I could not afford my student loans. So I wasn't making payments on them. They were accruing interest. We had finally gotten all of our debt other than my student loan paid off. And then our pipe that went from the basement all the way out to the front yard burst. And it was in the winter. And so that pipe was a couple $1,000s, and they wouldn't take a payment plan. I was like, please, we don't want to take on debt. They wouldn't take a payment plan. And he said, and if you wait on this and the ground freezes, and like we get further into winter and the ground freezes, it's going to be another, $1,000 here, whatever. I'm like, okay, we have no choice. So we put that on a credit card. And then our fridge went out. So we put that on a credit card. So when we moved back to Texas, we had very little profit that we were making from the house, but the profit that we did make, I'm talking very little. We ate into that savings with the move. So we came to Texas with nothing, and we were living in an apartment over by the church. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. We have 2 kids, so they were sharing a bedroom. Until the point that they were talking so much and my son wouldn't let my daughter sleep that I had to move her into what was like, I guess, the dining room. She still jokes to people like, I had to live in the dining room. I'm like, it wasn't that bad, kid. It wasn't that bad. But, we had come from so little, and to look back, Tim and I still to this day look back and think, my gosh, if you had told us what our life would look like today, all those years ago, I wouldn't have believed it. Putting groceries back to, I don't have to buy the off-brand if I don't want to. I am still very frugal.
I'm sure you
and
are.
I will buy those things. Like this is an Anthropologie top, but I did not pay Anthropologie prices. It was on clearance and an additional sale on top of that. So I don't buy expensive things typically, except for jewelry. I do like that. But I'll buy like a piece. My husband buys a piece. It's an investment. We keep that, and I wear that all the time. But
it sounds like you've learned lessons throughout your life, and you keep them. It's not something that you learned and used in that season, but you continue to use those lessons throughout your life.
Yeah. And God, if you allow him, will continue to grow you. Even in this season, he's growing me so much. And to a point where I've realized it's like Paul said, like, I've learned what it is to be content and to have and to not have. And I love my home, but it's an asset at the end of the day. And we could sell it tomorrow and I would be okay. We could live in an apartment again and I'd be okay. Is it a lot easier to live when you're not stressed about paying bills? Yeah, but there's still life that comes with it. Life isn't easier because of money. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned, especially this last year, is being content and knowing that even in dry seasons. Right now, if you're listening to this in 2025, the real estate market sucks. This has been the most trying year of my career. I have cried many times and said, I don't want to do this anymore. And God keeps me in it, but things are going to get better. But it's been a year of, I'm used to years and years of success in this business. And I have absolutely been successful this year. God has blessed this business far more than I ever deserve. It's not the success that I'm used to. I'm used to, at this point, hitting a certain number. And I'm very hard on myself. I can't believe I haven't hit this number. And then I realized, like, how stupid is that? Look at where we've come from. Like, so I can get caught up in those moments. Yeah. Sure, I'm not definitely not a saint. I get caught up in those moments sometimes. That's the flesh. And then here's, the Holy Spirit, like, hey, look where you've come from. Look where I've brought you from. In one check, it was an absolute miracle. If I had time to tell you every detail, you'd get goosebumps. In one check from one house that wasn't even like on my radar to sell, God paid off my entire student loans. Throughout this whole time, God has always been faithful. Yeah. We have no debt. We have money in the bank. We have gone from a place of making things work on $40,000 a year to where they're at now. And I think the biggest thing that's been so exciting is being able to give. I was always able to give my time and my talents, but never my treasures. We did. I mean, we tithed, but I wasn't able to give beyond that.
You got a little emotional earlier when you were seeing where you came from to now. What made you so emotional about that?
To go from $40,000 a year, and I don't want to make it about money because it's not about money, but I've sold houses where I've made $40,000 on one house. That doesn't mean that life is so much better, but to go from where we've been, where we struggled so hard, to where God has blessed us today. And if it all went away, I know we'd still be blessed because He's shown us. But to see that and to see Tim and I have been able to do and provide for our kids, like things we weren't even given. We're putting our daughter through college and we're paying cash. We put a pool in our backyard this year and we paid cash. And we're able to give. And there is still money in the bank, even in a dry season like this. And so God is good. And looking back on that season to where we are today is just sometimes you just feel unworthy. Like, why did you, there's so many people who've got it rough or who aren't, especially in this business, who aren't still having success in the business, especially in this year, in the last couple of years. And for whatever reason, He continues to bless it. But, it's the wake-up call. It's the Holy Spirit. Like, hey, if you get stuck in this moment of like, wake up, girl. Like, I think it helps to have someone ask a question like that because, you have to stop and take a moment, take a look around like, oh gosh, I got to slow down and go back and reflect on where did I come from? Like, what has God shown me? He took me out of this affluent area and put me in Maine and gave us very little and sustained us. We never went without. He always provided us. He never left us wanting. And then here we are, and we're in this abundance. He loved me just as much then as He does now, and it's just growth. That's all it is. It's growing and seeing what an amazing thing He can do.
That's it for the first part of Angela's story. Before you go, here's a quick glimpse at what's coming in part 2.
One of the lowest times in my life was having back-to-back miscarriage between my two children. My entire life, the only thing I ever wanted to be was a mom. And that is truly my calling and my gifting beside anything else. And I would give up everything I have just to be a mom to these kids. And losing a baby, being in the valley, the lowest of lows, and the dark, and the valley of the shadow of death, and praying like, God, you give life. Why did you take it? Why didn't you sustain this? Why didn't you give me this baby? And then to hold John as this perfectly beautiful, healthy boy. And God told me He was going to give me a son. And to hold John, and he's named after the Apostle John, who's my favorite. My heart is 100% healed because that's the kid that God had meant for me. And if I had given up hope in the middle of that valley, I would have missed out on so much goodness.
That's it for this episode of Unspoken Lives. If today's story moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect on your own journey, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next powerful conversation. I'm always on the lookout for new guests. If you know someone with a story that deserves to be shared, I'd love to hear from you. Check the show notes for contact details and make sure to follow along on social media at Unspoken Lives Podcast. Until next time, keep listening, keep sharing, and remember, every life has a story worth telling.